We are going to be replacing or restoring the CT or the CTW seat. First, you're going to remove the 4 by 5/8 black screws from the cap. There should be 8 screws in total. Once that cap is removed, you'll be able to see the interior of the CT or CTW seat, which makes the seat operate. We're going to want to remove that cap, and we're just going to do that by removing the 2 pins that are holding the block in place. You're going to need a rod and a hammer or a mallet to just hammer that out. As you can see, he removed the spring. There's several other pins in place that we're going to remove. If you go over to the right of the seat, we're going to remove the pin that's holding the bungee sheave and the line sheave in place. And before you remove the pin, hold on to the bungee so that it doesn't go flying once that pin is removed. And just like that, the pin and the sheaves are both loose. You want to just collect those and put them off to the side where they're not going to be lost. And we can just move over to the other side and do the same. Remove the pin that's holding the sheaves in place. And now your line is free and your bungee is free. And as you see there, he's removing one more pin that is over to the left-hand side. And then he just grabs some pliers to help pull it all the way out. And then removing this final pin is going to free up the gear assembly. So it's that black piece there with what looks like tread on it. There are 2 screws on the side of the seat that are clamping down on the line cover. So we're going to remove the screws that are going to free that black line cover. And if you turn the seat upside down, what he's doing there is pushing the line cover through the seat. And the line is clamped with hog rings, and it's hugging this hard piece of rope, and that prevents it from pulling out. We're going to undo that assembly by removing the hog ring so that we can pull the line and the line cover out of the assembly. And what he's doing is just cutting it off. You could do the same, or you can pry it open and reuse them. But if you have some replacements, you can just cut it off and it'll be a little bit easier. And now we're going to undo the knots that are holding that hard piece of rope together. And that's pretty, it's tied on there really tightly. So he's using 2 pliers to pry that knot out. And this part might take a little elbow grease, but it'll come undone. So he got one of the knots out, but there's one more. And there you go. The little blue line came loose. And after you just take that blue part out, it'll just slide right out. And then if you pull on that black cover, it'll just slide right off. And now you can just pull your linear gear right out. That whole part is called the linear gear assembly. The plastic piece with the line, that's the linear gear assembly, and attached to it on the other side is going to be the bungee. And here we're removing everything. We're assuming that you're gonna have to start from scratch. But if you're just rigging your seat over again, you don't have to do this part. You don't have to remove the bungee. You're just rerouting it. And so here we're starting from scratch to assemble the seat. So you just slip it behind the 2 plastic posts. You're gonna weave the bungee over and just make a loop, just like you see on that end. And then you can apply the hog ring. Here we have a machine, but likely you'll have to do it with pliers. And then just get the sheaves that you had and make sure that the bungee is underneath when you're installing it. That's going to be a lot easier than trying to get the bungee to go underneath the pulley. Just install it with it already underneath. Then go ahead and put that pin back in, and it's going to hold everything in place. Okay, so you're just going to want to go ahead and put the pin in partially, and what we're doing is installing the bungee. So just leave a little bit, and then your bungee, you're gonna pull it across, and it already has a loop in it. So put it through the pin, hold it in place with something like a screwdriver, and finish hammering in that pin to keep it in place. And now that the pin is in place with the bungee, we're gonna install the pulleys over it. And then just put the thicker pin in to hold the pulleys in place. And as you can see, one line goes over and one goes under. The one that goes under is the longer one, and it's going to be woven through the bottom pulley. The shorter one is going to go over top. And then just go ahead and install one of the center pins, and that's just going to keep the lines and bungees in place from getting caught. And now that that pin is in, you're going to want to weave it over to the line, the white line, weave it over to the other side. And what he did there is he smashed the end of the line. And that just made it really, really flat, and it's going to help us weave it through the rope. We use a handmade tool. It's kind of like a bobby pin or a needle. So you weave it through there, and that's going to pull it through the seat frame so it's coming out on the other end. Just think of like an embroidery needle. That's what we're doing. And it's a really thin material, kind of like a coat hanger. Just a really thin metal rod. And then just go off and tie a knot that's easy to take out, just to hold everything in place for now. We're going to do the same thing to the other line. You're going to smash it with a hammer to make sure it can go through that custom tool, which again is just a thin piece of metal. And just go ahead and pull it through, and the line's going to sit on that pulley. And sometimes what happens with these lines is that they stretch, so now they have extra slack in them, and sometimes we just need to rig them again to remove all that slack, and the knot will likely have to be higher up, and we'll get to that a little later. So now we're partially installing again the pins that are going to hold in the cap. So go ahead and line up the block with the holes. So those pins should enter into that little circle right there. That little slot is where you kind of have to line things up. And then you can just pry the block a little further down just to make sure that you did get it in the right spot before you finish installing them. And now we're just going to reinstall that pin. So hook it to the end of the block, and then grab a tool and pull it onto the pin to its left. And there's a center divider on the cap, which has to go in between the pulleys. So go ahead and separate the pulleys and put the cap on there. That's just going to ensure that the cap goes on there correctly. Then once you got it on there right, go ahead and reinstall the 4 by 5/8 screws. We're using a drill here, but he does this every day. Just to make sure you don't strip it, I would recommend using just a handheld screwdriver. And what he's doing here is tying the lines together, and then he's going to pull it. And this is going to take all of the slack out of the inside of the cap. And you want to make sure you're pulling that gray handle, which is going to let you get all of that slack out of there. So pull the handle and then pull the line. And then right there, he let go of the handle before he let go of the line. It's going to clamp it so it's not going to go back in. Again, pull the clamp, pull the line, let the clamp go, and then you can let go of the line and undo the knots. And the same way that we wove the line through the frame, we're gonna hammer the end of the line to make it flat. We're gonna put it through a tool that resembles an embroidery needle or a bobby pin. And we're gonna weave that line through the black line cover. We're gonna do that on each side of the seat. Once you got it through, go ahead and tie a knot so it doesn't come undone while we're doing the other side. That's a closer look at the tool. Again, flatten out the line. Put the tool through the rope. Once it exits on the other side, weave the line through the tool. Once you have the line through the tool, it should only need to be a few inches. Pull the tool out, and that's going to weave the line through the rope cover. And then tie your knot to hold everything in place. We're going to be reinstalling the clamps that are going to hold down that rope cover. So you see those little two inserts? That's where the screws will go. Then just reinstall the cover with the screws. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. That little cover is going to clamp the line cover so it'll stay in place. The next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna weave the line along with the rope cover through the bottom frame. And you're just gonna use a flathead screwdriver just to push it through. It'll go through really easily. And it's the front part of the seat where those holes are located. And you're just gonna tie a simple knot and then pull on that knot to get it nice and tight. Just a simple knot right at the edge of the line. Grab some pliers and tighten that knot. And the hog ring that we broke off initially, we're just going to reinstall it. Again, we have a gun for it, but you could do the same thing just with some pliers. Reinstall the hog ring. And you're going to do a small loop on the line. And you see that little piece of blue rope? You're just going to clamp it down. Another loop, the hard piece of blue rope, and you're going to clamp it down. And then you're going to pull that through until it blocks off. And that whole assembly, it's not going to pull through anymore because that little piece of line is keeping it from pulling all the way through.
Oh, pero ¿sabes qué? Ocupo cambiar el...
And the last step is you are going to put pressure on the seat. You want to push it as hard as you can. You're not going to break the seat, but you do want to test it to make sure that those knots are going to hold up. If your line still has slack in it, you're going to have to take that blue line rope and move the knot up further up. So you're going to be removing some slack out of that line. And that is how you fix your CT and CTW seat.